I never thought the woman I planned to spend my life with would try to take what I had built from scratch. The tech company I founded was my first baby, the result of countless sleepless nights and sacrifices most people would never understand. Tiffany and I had been together for 2 years planning a wedding that would make our families proud. But 3 weeks before our big day, she delivered an ultimatum that revealed everything our relationship truly was. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. And if you have ever faced unexpected demands from your partner's family, hit that like and subscribe button while I explain how I discovered who my fiancée really was. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Chicago, I never imagined I would one day own a successful software company. My parents worked hard all their lives, my father as a high school teacher, and my mother as a nurse, instilling in me the values of hard work and perseverance. They scraped together enough to send me to college, where I studied computer science and developed a passion for solving business problems through technology. After graduation, while my friends were accepting comfortable corporate jobs, I decided to take a risk. I lived in a tiny studio apartment, eating ramen noodles and working 20-hour days to build my company, Envision Tech Solutions. The first 3 years were brutal. I lost count of how many times I nearly went bankrupt, or how many potential investors laughed me out of their offices. But by year 4, things started to turn around. My innovative inventory management software caught the attention of several mid-sized retail chains, and suddenly, I was signing contracts worth 6 figures. I hired my first employees, moved into a real office, and started paying myself a reasonable salary. By year 7, Envision Tech had grown to 30 employees and was valued at just over $20 million. Not a unicorn by Silicon Valley standards, but a solid success that made me proud. I met Tiffany at a regional business conference where I was giving a presentation on supply chain technology. She was working for a marketing firm that represented one of the event sponsors. When she approached me after my talk with insightful questions and a dazzling smile, I was immediately intrigued. We exchanged business cards, and I called her the very next day. Our first date was at an upscale Italian restaurant, where we talked for hours about our ambitions and dreams. Tiffany was beautiful, intelligent, and seemed to understand the entrepreneurial mindset. She shared stories about her childhood in Connecticut, her education at an exclusive private college, and her career aspirations in corporate marketing. There was an instant connection between us, something I had never experienced before. As our relationship progressed, I introduced Tiffany to my parents, who were warm but reserved. They later told me they found her charming but wondered if she truly appreciated the value of hard work. I dismissed their concerns as typical parental overprotection. When I finally met Tiffany's parents, Arthur and Diane, at their country club, 6 months into our relationship, I began to understand her background better. They lived in an affluent suburb, drove luxury cars, and seemed very focused on appearances. Arthur introduced himself as a business consultant and spent much of our first meeting asking questions about my company's growth strategy and profit margins. I found it a bit forward, but assumed he was just trying to get to know me. Looking back now, the red flags were there from the beginning. Tiffany always preferred the most expensive restaurants. Her birthday expectations included designer gifts. She would comment on how my condo was nice but would need significant upgrades once we were married. When I mentioned investing profits back into the business, she would subtly push for more luxurious personal expenditures. Despite these small concerns, I was in love. After dating for a year, I proposed with a 3-carat diamond ring that cost more than my first car. I had saved specifically for this, wanting to make her happy. The proposal was elaborate too, involving a private yacht cruise on Lake Michigan with a professional photographer to capture the moment. Tiffany cried with joy and immediately started planning what she called her dream wedding. What followed was an 8-month engagement, filled with escalating wedding plans. What started as a reasonably sized ceremony with 100 guests evolved into a 300-person extravaganza at one of Chicago's most prestigious venues. The budget doubled, then tripled. I was uncomfortable but wanted to make Tiffany happy, so I agreed to most of her requests. During this time, Tiffany began showing more interest in my business. She suggested I meet more regularly with her father, who she insisted had valuable business connections that could help Envision Tech grow. Arthur began stopping by my office, often unannounced, asking increasingly detailed questions about our client list, profit margins, and expansion plans. To my discredit, I shared more than I should have. I wanted to impress my future father-in-law and demonstrate that I could provide well for his daughter. I showed Arthur our business plan, introduced him to key team members, and even gave him a tour of our development lab, where we were working on proprietary new software. My business partner and longtime friend Jackson pulled me aside after one of these visits. Jackson and I had been friends since college, and he had joined Envision Tech in year 2, taking a huge pay cut from his corporate job because he believed in my vision. I will never forget what he said. "Emmanuel, I know you are excited about your future family, but something does not feel right about Arthur. The questions he asks are not casual interest. They are the questions someone asks when they are evaluating a business acquisition." I brushed off his concerns, assuring him that Arthur was just being thorough in getting to know the family his daughter was marrying into. In retrospect, I should have listened to Jackson. He had always been the more cautious one between us, the voice of reason when my optimism clouded my judgment. 3 weeks before our wedding day, Tiffany suggested we have dinner at Ellison, an upscale steakhouse downtown. She said she wanted to discuss some final wedding details away from the stress of both our offices. I was happy for the break, as managing wedding planning while running my company had become increasingly challenging. The evening started pleasantly enough. We ordered cocktails and appetizers, chatting about the upcoming rehearsal dinner and our honeymoon plans for Bora Bora. Tiffany looked stunning, in a navy blue dress I had never seen before, and I remember thinking how lucky I was to be marrying such a beautiful, accomplished woman. Midway through our main course, Tiffany received a text message. After reading it, her demeanor changed subtly. She put down her phone, took a sip of wine, and looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. A mixture of determination and calculation that made me instantly uncomfortable. "Emmanuel," she said, setting down her glass with precision. "There is something important we need to discuss about our future." I nodded, assuming she wanted to talk about our housing plans after the wedding. We had been debating between purchasing a larger condo downtown or a house in the suburbs. "My parents and I have been talking," she continued, "and they believe that as we join our lives together, our families should have shared interests in all aspects, including your business." My fork paused halfway to my mouth. "What do you mean exactly?" Daddy thinks. "And I agree that he and Mom should become shareholders in Envision Tech, as a wedding gift from you." Her voice was casual, as if she were asking me to pass the salt. I carefully set down my utensils, my appetite suddenly gone. "Shareholders, Tiffany, that is not something I have ever considered. The company is my life's work, and outside of Jackson I have never considered bringing in other partners, especially not as a gift." Tiffany's expression hardened. "Emmanuel, this is not an unreasonable request. My father has extensive business experience and connections. They are investing in our future by paying for most of this wedding. It is only fair that you secure their future too." "How much ownership are we talking about here?" I asked, still hoping this was some kind of misunderstanding. 30% should be sufficient," she replied without hesitation, as if she had rehearsed this number. "Transferred before the wedding, of course." I nearly choked on my water. 30% of my company was worth over $6 million. This was no small request. This was a demand for a significant portion of everything I had built. "This is not happening, Tiffany. I cannot just give away a third of my company." "Why would you even ask this?" Her response chilled me to the bone. "Because if you do not, Daddy says we should reconsider whether this marriage is a good business decision for our family." And I agree with him. The restaurant suddenly felt too small, too hot. The remainder of dinner was tense and uncomfortable. Tiffany acted as though she had simply asked me to consider a new paint color for our living room, not demanded a multi-million-dollar wedding gift under threat of canceling our marriage. The drive home was silent. When I dropped her off at her apartment, she kissed me on the cheek, as if nothing had happened, and said, "Think about it, honey. Talk to your lawyer if you need to, but remember how important family is." For the next week, my communication with Tiffany was strained. She sent casual texts about wedding details, as if our dinner conversation had never happened. I was in a state of shock, unable to reconcile the woman I thought I knew with this person who could make such a calculated demand. Then came the ambush. I was in the middle of a meeting with my development team when my assistant knocked on the door to tell me that Tiffany and her father were in the reception area insisting on seeing me. I excused myself, feeling a mixture of confusion and dread. Arthur stood in our reception area, wearing an expensive suit and a confident smile. Tiffany beside him, both looking as if this was a scheduled routine visit. "Emmanuel, my boy," Arthur boomed, extending his hand. I thought it was time we had a proper business discussion about our family's future together. I reluctantly led them to my office, signaling my assistant to hold all calls. Once the door closed, Arthur wasted no time. He opened his leather portfolio and pulled out several documents. "I have taken the liberty of drafting a preliminary shareholder agreement," he said, sliding the papers across my desk. "I have also outlined how my connections could help expand Envision Tech into new markets. With my guidance, we could potentially double your valuation within 18 months. I glanced at the documents, noting that they requested not just ownership shares but also a seat on the board of directors and access to all financial records. This was far more than a family gift. This was a takeover attempt. "Arthur, with all due respect, this is not going to happen," I said firmly. "My company is not for sale or distribution, especially not as a condition of marrying your daughter." Tiffany's eyes flashed with anger. "Emmanuel, you are being unreasonable and selfish. This is about building a future together." After they left, I immediately called Jackson and our company lawyer. What followed was a disturbing discovery process. A quick background check on Arthur revealed that his successful business career was largely fictional. His previous company had filed for bankruptcy after mismanagement and allegations of fraud. He had been attempting to rebuild his reputation and finances for the past 5 years with little success. Moreover, our IT department discovered that someone had accessed sensitive company files using Tiffany's guest Wi-Fi credentials when she had visited the office. Files regarding our client list, financial projections, and proprietary technology had been viewed and possibly copied. When I confronted Tiffany about this at her apartment the following evening, she did not even attempt to deny it. "Of course, Daddy needed to see the full picture," she said dismissively. "He is not going to invest his time and reputation in a business without proper due diligence." "Invest his time, Tiffany. Your father is trying to take a significant portion of my company for nothing in return, and you helped him gather insider information. Do you understand? That could be illegal." Her face transformed, then any pretense of love vanishing. "Let me make this very simple for you, Emmanuel. Either you sign over those shares to my parents, or there will be no wedding. And trust me, you do not want to see what happens if you embarrass me by calling off our wedding. My father knows people who can make life very difficult for small tech companies." I left her apartment that night with my mind spinning. The woman I thought I loved had just threatened me and my business. The future I had imagined was crumbling, and I felt like I was falling through space with nothing to grab onto. That night I could not sleep. I paced my condo, replaying every moment of our relationship, wondering how I had missed the signs. Was anything real? Had she ever loved me? Or had I just been a target all along? The next morning I called Jackson and our lawyer Sophia to my office for an emergency meeting. I shared everything that had happened, including Tiffany's threat. "This is extortion, plain and simple," Sophia said, her expression grave. "They are attempting to leverage your relationship to gain access to company assets, and the unauthorized access of confidential information could constitute corporate espionage." Jackson looked furious, but not entirely surprised. I knew something was off about them from the beginning. The way Arthur kept asking about our client encryption protocols and profit margins during what was supposed to be casual conversation at your engagement party. This was never about family, Emmanuel. This was a calculated plan. I spent the next 2 days in a dark place, emotionally alternating between grief over the relationship I thought I had and anger at being so thoroughly deceived. I called my parents, who flew in from Chicago immediately. When I explained the situation, they exchanged a look I could not quite interpret. "We never wanted to interfere," my mother said gently, "but we always sensed something was not right." The way she talked about your success, as if it was already partly hers. The comments about how you should be spending your money differently. My father, never one for many words, put his hand on my shoulder. "Son, sometimes the most expensive lesson is the one that saves you from an even costlier mistake." Their support strengthened my resolve. With Sophia's guidance, I gathered all evidence of Arthur and Tiffany's attempts to access company information. Our IT team provided logs showing exactly which files had been accessed and when. We also documented all conversations where shares had been demanded as a condition of marriage. Once we had everything in order, I made a decision. Rather than simply ending the engagement, I wanted them to understand exactly why their plan had failed. I wanted to stand up not just for myself, but for everything I had built and everyone who depended on our company for their livelihood. I called Tiffany and asked her to bring her parents to my office the following day for a meeting to discuss the shareholder agreement. She sounded triumphant, clearly believing I had capitulated to their demands. I arranged for Jackson and Sophia to be present, as well as our head of IT security. When Tiffany arrived with her parents, all three were dressed impeccably and wearing expressions of barely concealed victory. Arthur carried a leather portfolio similar to the one from his previous visit, likely containing updated documents for me to sign. "Thank you all for coming," I began once everyone was seated in our conference room. "I have given a lot of thought to our discussions about the future of Envision Tech and my relationship with Tiffany." Arthur leaned forward eagerly. "I knew you would see reason, Emmanuel. You are making the right decision for everyone involved." "Actually, I am," I replied calmly, "but not in the way you think." I nodded to our IT director, who displayed on the large screen a detailed log of all the unauthorized file accesses from Tiffany's credentials, along with screenshots of the confidential information that had been viewed. These files were accessed without permission. I explained, my voice steady despite the anger I felt. They contain proprietary information about our technology, our clients, and our financial projections. Accessing them without authorization is not only a breach of trust, but potentially illegal. The color drained from Arthur's face. Diane looked confused, glancing between her husband and daughter. Tiffany's expression hardened into something ugly I had never seen before. Furthermore, I continued attempting to force a transfer of company shares as a condition of marriage constitutes a form of extortion, especially when combined with threats against the company, if I refused. I stood up then, feeling a strange calm descend over me. I built Envision Tech from nothing. I lived on ramen noodles and slept on a futon in a studio apartment while I coded for 20 hours a day. I missed my sister's wedding, because we were in the middle of our first major deployment. I have sacrificed everything for this company, not just for myself, but for our employees who depend on us for their livelihoods. I looked directly at Tiffany, the woman I had thought I would spend my life with. A real partnership in business or in life is built on trust, mutual respect, and shared values. It is not built on ultimatums, deception, or treating love as a business transaction. The room was completely silent. Even Sophia, who had seen countless tense negotiations, seemed impressed by the moment. "So here is my response to your demand," I said, pushing a folder across the table. "This is not a shareholder agreement. It is documentation of all unauthorized access to our systems, all instances where confidential information was compromised, and all conversations where demands were made for company shares as a condition of proceeding with our wedding." I paused, making eye contact with each of them. "I will not be signing over any portion of Envision Tech. I will not be bullied or manipulated into giving away what I have built. And most importantly, I will not be marrying someone who sees me as nothing more than a business opportunity." Tiffany's face contorted with rage. "You cannot do this." Do you have any idea how many people have already RSVP'd? My dress alone cost $20,000. The cost of the wedding is nothing compared to what you were trying to take from me, I replied. Not just financially, but my dignity and self-respect as well. Arthur attempted to regain control of the situation. Now, Emmanuel, perhaps we have had a misunderstanding. Tiffany was only trying to ensure that both families would be provided for. We can discuss more reasonable terms. I shook my head. There is nothing to discuss. The wedding is off. I have already contacted the venue and key vendors to cancel our reservations. I will cover the cancellation fees as agreed in our contracts. Beyond that, we have nothing further to discuss, except through our respective attorneys if you choose to pursue this matter. Diane, who had been silent until now, suddenly burst into tears. Arthur, what have you done? What have you involved? Our daughter in. The realization that his wife had been unaware of his scheme added another layer of revelation to the moment. This had been Arthur's plan all along with Tiffany as his willing accomplice. Tiffany stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. You will regret this, Emmanuel. Nobody humiliates me like this and gets away with it. This is not about humiliation, I replied calmly. This is about honesty and integrity. Something you might want to consider for your future relationships. As they stormed out of the conference room, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. The future I had imagined was gone, but so was the deception I had been living with. Jackson clapped me on the shoulder after they left. That was the most badass thing I have ever seen you do, and the most necessary. Sophia was already gathering the documents. If they try anything, we are well prepared. But my guess is they will slink away to find an easier target. The next few days were a blur of cancellations and explanations. I sent a brief, dignified email to all wedding guests, explaining that the wedding had been called off and apologizing for any inconvenience. I returned gifts that had already arrived and resolved all financial commitments with vendors. The hardest part was facing friends and family, who wanted details I was not ready to share. I simply said that Tiffany and I had discovered fundamental differences that could not be reconciled, and I was grateful we had discovered them before the wedding rather than after. The weeks following the canceled engagement were some of the most difficult of my life. Despite knowing I had made the right decision, I was overwhelmed by a sense of failure and self-doubt. Had I been so blinded by love that I had missed obvious warning signs? Could I trust my own judgment again? I threw myself into work, initially staying at the office until midnight, most nights, as if the additional hours could somehow fill the passant void left in my personal life. Jackson grew concerned enough to stage what he called a friendship intervention, showing up at my condo one Sunday morning with breakfast and a firm insistence that we talk. You made the right call, he said, as we sat on my balcony overlooking the Chicago skyline. But making the right decision does not mean it will not hurt. You need to give yourself permission to grieve what you thought you had. His words broke something in me, and for the first time since ending the engagement, I allowed myself to truly feel the pain of betrayal. The relationship I had invested 2 years in had been, at least in part, a calculation on Tiffany's part. The future I had imagined, the family I thought we would build together, had been a mirage. At Jackson's urging, I started seeing a therapist who specialized in relationship trauma. Dr. Russell helped me understand that what I had experienced was a form of emotional and financial abuse. She guided me through exercises to rebuild trust in myself and my own perceptions. The fact that you ultimately recognized what was happening and stood up for yourself shows remarkable strength and self-awareness, she told me during one session. Many people in your position would have given in to avoid the pain and embarrassment of a canceled wedding. Gradually, I began to reconnect with friends I had neglected during my relationship with Tiffany. I discovered that several of them had harbored concerns about her but had kept quiet out of respect for my happiness. My college roommate, Anthony, admitted over beers that he had never trusted the way Tiffany seemed to parade me around like a trophy at social events. It was like she was more excited about being engaged to the founder of Envision Tech than being engaged to Emmanuel, the person he confessed. Professionally, something unexpected happened. With the distraction of wedding planning and Tiffany's family's interference removed, I found a renewed focus and creativity regarding the company. We launched a new product line that had been in development hell for months, and customer response exceeded our projections by 40%. Our team, sensing my renewed commitment, rallied around our goals with fresh energy. I made a point of recognizing their contributions more explicitly and implementing several work-life balance initiatives I had been considering for years. 6 months after the canceled wedding, I received a text message from Tiffany asking to meet for coffee to clear the air. After discussing it with Dr. Russell, I agreed, choosing a public cafe near my office. Tiffany looked different, somehow less polished than I remembered, with a nervousness I had never seen in her before. She explained that her father's business had collapsed completely after several investors pulled out due to concerns about his ethics. Her parents had been forced to downsize significantly, selling their country club membership and one of their cars. "I realize now how wrong we were," she said, tears in her eyes. "I got caught up in Daddy's promises and plans. I did love you, Emmanuel, in my way. I wonder if we could try again, start fresh." Looking at her, I felt nothing but a calm certainty. "I wish you well, Tiffany, but no, what happened between us was not a misunderstanding or a mistake. It was a fundamental breach of trust and respect. Those are not things I can rebuild with you." She seemed genuinely shocked by my refusal, which told me she had not truly changed or understood the magnitude of what she had done. As I walked away from that cafe, I felt the last weight lift from my shoulders. I was finally free of the past and ready for whatever came next. That next began to take shape a few months later, when I met Adriana at a technology ethics conference, where I was speaking about data privacy. As the head of cybersecurity for a healthcare consortium, she asked the most challenging and thoughtful questions during the Q&A session. We ended up continuing the conversation over dinner, where I found myself captivated by her integrity and passion for her work. Our relationship developed slowly, built on a foundation of mutual respect and shared values. When I eventually told her about my experience with Tiffany, she was appalled but not judgmental. "We all have pasts that shape us," she said. "The question is what we learn from them and how we grow." With Adriana, I found what a genuine partnership actually feels like. She celebrates my successes but also challenges me to be better. She has her own career and ambitions that I support wholeheartedly. We make decisions together with open communication and respect for each other's boundaries. Looking back now, I realize that standing up to Tiffany and her family was about much more than protecting my business. It was about honoring my own worth and refusing to compromise my integrity. The company continues to thrive, having recently expanded into international markets. But my true success has been in rebuilding my ability to trust both in others and in myself. I have learned that real love does not come with conditions or demands. It does not try to take what you have built or use your vulnerabilities against you. Real love is supportive, honest, and kind, even when faced with difficult truths. The peace I have found since that confrontation in my conference room comes not just from escaping a destructive relationship, but from knowing that I was strong enough to stand up for myself when it mattered most. I refused to be manipulated or controlled, even when doing so meant facing painful truths and an uncertain future. If my story resonates with you, remember that you deserve relationships built on mutual respect and genuine care. Never compromise your core values, or give away pieces of yourself to keep someone else happy. The right people will love you for who you are, not what you can give them or what you represent. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision that felt painful in the moment, but led to unexpected growth? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story helped you recognize red flags in your own relationships, please like and subscribe for more stories about overcoming life's challenges. And if you know someone who might be struggling with a similar situation, share this video with them. Sometimes knowing we are not alone in our experiences is the first step toward healing. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, protecting your peace is never selfish, it is necessary.